Hello, my friends, and welcome to Embracing What is Real. I'm your host, Helane Lipson. Embracing What's Real is the forum to explore the nature of reality and the impact our current belief systems have on our lives. All of our deep-rooted old beliefs are what many of us use to judge ourselves and our actions. Our current belief systems impact every single choice we make. So when we feed our spirit with new, empowering ideas about the meaning of life, the meaning of our lives change. Today, our special guest on Embracing What's Real is Matthew Kocel. Matthew Kocel is a throat singer, sound healer, and visionary musician driven by his mission to inspire peace through the universal language of music and sacred sound. The exquisite harmonic overtones of his voice, 2, 3, or more notes at the same time, vibrate the core of your being with extraordinary sensations, awakening a deep spiritual presence beyond words. You can hear his music at omshaman.com. Now, before I bring on Matthew Kocel, I'd like to play a clip of one of my favorite pieces of his called Grace. This is from Matthew's upcoming album entitled Om Shaman. So here's Grace. So that was Grace from Matthew Kocel's upcoming album soon to be released. And here with us today, we have Matthew Kocel. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Helane.
Oh, so good to have you on Embracing What is Real. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This is really an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Wow, that was just such a beautiful piece. I'm so moved by your music, but Grace in particular really moves me and just opens me up and relaxes me. What are some of the instruments that you're playing on that piece?
Well, what you hear is the keyboard is a harmonium, which is a keyboard from India. It's an acoustic instrument, um, and it's a three-octave keyboard that is works kind of like an accordion does, in that you pump with one hand a bellows which pushes air through reeds, which are triggered by the little piano keys. So basically, I'm playing the chords with one hand and pumping air with the other, and the rest is my voice.
Incredible, incredible. So now, Matthew, did you start off as a singer? In other words, what was your dominant instrument, or how did you start this musical journey?
Yeah, I played music as a child. Started like a lot of people with piano when I was quite young, and didn't stay with that, and then moved on to trumpet. I was just experimenting with music, um, and then in high school, I really got into guitar and singing, and went off to college for 2 years, studied music, and switched to bass guitar. And then after 2 years, I quit college and moved to the big city, Denver, Colorado, to join a rock band and find my fortune and fame. Um,
So
so
what
I
what did
was
you play? What did you play in the rock band?
I was a bass player and singer, and I started after a few years of playing other people's material. I got disillusioned with that and started focusing on writing original music. So I had the opportunity to play with some really fine musicians along the way. But what really drew me to music as a path was the transcendent quality that is possible through music. It was one of the few forces in my life as uh, a teenager that made sense to me and kind of lifted me out of the confusion and conflict of the world. So I was looking for that experience, and it was hard to maintain with the way I was going. So when I was about 27 years old, in astrology they call that the Saturn return, because Saturn returns to where you are, where it was when you were born, and it's common for people to question their reason for living and their purpose in life. And I was going into that very deeply and not feeling fulfilled in my life. It became quite depressing. So I got to a point where I realized I needed to find my path. I needed to find a way to connect to spirit and to connect to source. And it wasn't going to come through the path that I grew up with my family. We went to church every Sunday, and I actually had a spiritual awakening when I was about 12 years old through that system, but I wasn't able to maintain that vibration and to hold that experience in my daily life. So I kind of brushed it aside. Well, in my need, this deep longing, I went out searching and, of course, went to a bookstore. The first book that jumped out at me and which I took home with me was called Inner Power Secrets from Tibet and the Orient. Now, this is back in about 1989, and I didn't even know what a chakra was at that point. But in this book, I learned about the human energy system from an Eastern perspective, and learn some practices that I still do today. And it felt like I had found a stream of truth that I could latch onto, and that would illuminate my path. And so I began practicing these meditations and breath work, and my first explorations of working in with my own energy system. And about 6 months later, I walked into another store and heard a sound that changed my life. And it was a recording of Tibetan monks from the Gyuto monastery. And they had this sound cranked up really loud on the stereo in this metaphysical store. I asked what it was, because it was this deep overtone chanting, and I didn't even know what a mantra was at that point. And when they told me it was Tibetan monks, I just shivers, went up my spine, and I said, "You've got to be kidding!" Part of me was afraid and wanted to run away from the sound, and the other part of me wanted to lie down in between the speakers and, and travel with it. So I bought a tape and took it home, and I started to listen to it a lot and meditate to the sound. And it just seemed oddly familiar. So it percolated within me for a long time. It was a gradual process, but several years later, I decided that I needed to get into the healing arts as a way of offering my heart to the world. My last band broke up in 1994, and it was really heartbreaking for me. And I just realized at that point that I couldn't go on that way of pursuing music, and that had pretty much run its course for my life. So when I got into healing arts, I got my first Reiki training and was training in massage therapy and other energy systems, and also doing a lot of meditation. And I had discovered the power of Sanskrit mantras. And so I was experimenting, chanting some of these mantras of this ancient language, and really feeling some essence there. So while doing all this, I got an inspiration to start holding meditation circles in my home. My intention in holding a meditation circle was to create a space where people could ground into the earth, to really remember their feeling of belonging here on earth and connect to our source, however we all may individually experience that. And also I really felt that in a group setting, the energy would be magnified exponentially, and that we could use this group experience to send our prayers of love and healing out to the earth and to everyone here. So without really knowing any more than that, I called up my friends and said, "Hey, I'm starting a meditation circle. Come on over." And so people started to show up, and I still have some very close friends that I met for the first time when they were invited to this meditation circle. It went on for several years. After a few months of guided meditations that I was leading, I started to chant an Om here and there. This is, it felt like a way to transmit what I was trying to convey in the guided meditation. And the people all told me that they felt something quite different whenever I would chant an Om. So that encouraged me to keep doing it. And after a couple of years, the Tibetan deep overtone sound began to come through my voice. And it felt amazing from my perspective. And again, the people that were there in the meditation circle also were feeling it on many levels. So, being a musician, eventually I started to collect instruments that I could make music with. Um, so, I have not studied in Tibet, or at this point, I have not studied with any Tibetan monks. I do feel a real heart connection with that lineage. And what I'm doing is my own expressions of sacred sound. Some of the overtone chants that I do are very similar to the Tibetan lineage, but it's not something that was given to me by by those people. It's just something that I kind of picked up on, and the other sounds I create with my voice are various forms of throat singing and overtone singing. There's traditions from Mongolia and Tuva, which is near Mongolia, where they create these multiple tones with their voice, and there's many different styles of throat singing. There's also in Northern Europe, there's what they call overtone singing. It sounds a little bit different from the Tibetan and the Tuvan and Mongolian throat singing. It's more natural voice with high overtone pitches. And a lot of what I do is reminiscent of those sounds as well. I'm not a purist in any of the forms, but this is, I'm transmitting through my voice what I hear when I get inspired and I hear this music.
I mean, Matthew, I was definitely wondering about this. I mean, I was definitely wondering, how did you do it? How did you figure out how to do it? I mean, it's really like singing 2 or 3 notes at the same time with your voice. And so what happened? You just, this is what you were saying. This is the overlay you were describing.
Yeah. When I was first started chanting Sanskrit mantras, I began to experiment with the sound, and I was slowing down the pronunciation of these words, and I started to hear new tones, higher pitches, like they were chanting along with me. And so, yeah, it kind of opened my perception of hearing more within the sounds that are all around us. And so, yeah, it just grew from there.
I mean, it's incredible how you learned how to, I guess, replicate the sound you heard, or I'm just trying to figure out, it came from within and it just came out of you that way?
Yeah, and I had actually gone to, let's see, I think it was in late 1999, I went to a weekend workshop with Jonathan Goldman, who lives in Boulder, Colorado, and he has a lot of sound healing CDs out and makes some fine music. And he didn't teach the Tibetan overtone chant, but he did demonstrate it once over the weekend. He did one long Tibetan Om, and he just said, some people will get this after being around other people who do it. And the light bulb went on. I thought to myself, that would be me. And the very next day, I got it. So I called up Jonathan on the phone and got his voicemail, and I left him a big, long Tibetan Om and a thank you on his voicemail. So that was the way it popped through for me. In 2005, after I had moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, I met up with some local guys who were into throat singing. My friend Jerry DeVoyne, and he had a group called the One Voice Harmonic Choir that did throat singing and to original compositions and mantras. And well, I did the same trick. I called him up and left a big long Tibetan gnome on his voicemail, and I think that was my audition. And I joined the group for a few years, and we had a lot of fun, and it was great to have a group of guys to experiment with and improvise with, and make beautiful sacred music with. Um, I'm no longer performing with them, but what I'm doing is really an extension of that meditation circle, because the music to me is a prayer, and I have some very interesting instruments, but I think the main instrument, the most important instrument, is my heart, because the sounds are powerful in their own right, but it's the intention that that deep prayer and longing for healing and harmony in the earth and within myself that is entraining the sounds. And so when you hear this music, it's my deepest prayers for healing the earth and for realizing the potential of human consciousness in our time.
Oh, Matthew, you see, it's why it's such a gift and such an honor to be speaking to you, because your music has life-changing effects on the people who listen to it. No exaggeration. I know when I first heard you during the Symphony of Meditation conference, I felt, when I listened to your music, I felt like my heart was cracking open. And I know you started by blowing into this conch shell, and then I guess I'm wondering, you were talking about setting intentions earlier on as you were speaking before, but I'd like to know, what is the intent that you set before starting to play each piece?
Well, my intention is that everyone who's listening will receive exactly what they need in that moment. And to prepare myself, it's a pretty simple process of just, remembering my connection to the earth, kind of rooting down and opening to source, and then including whoever is present in my awareness. And it all happens quite quickly. And then just remembering my intention to help somehow through the music, to help us evolve and to heal our lives and heal ourselves and heal our relationship to the earth, heal our relationships with each other, personally and on a larger scale.
It's interesting because it did. I was listening. I had the virtual. I was able to hear the conference online, and so me and my best friend were listening to you at the same time. At the end, after hearing you, I said, "Oh my God, my heart chakra was cracked. My heart was cracked open. My heart was just so big, so wide." She said, "For me," she said, she was listening to it with her 2-year-old daughter. She's like, the baby finally calmed down and just was able to really sleep. And for me, it just grounded me out. She said, "Wait, so the same exact piece had a completely different effect on both of us."
That's beautiful. When I'm in a room full of people doing this musical meditation, they'll often come up to me afterward and share their experience, and it's always different. Even for all the people in the room at the same time, people experience it on their own unique levels, and some people will have visions. Often people who have never had visual phenomenon in their meditations before. Other people tell me they knew they were dreaming, they're experiencing dreams, but they are also awake and lying down or sitting, listening to the music. They knew where they were, and they knew it was happening, but they were dreaming at the same time. Sometimes folks have an experience in their physical body where there's an old injury or a blockage, and they'll feel the energy intensify around that area. And it can be uncomfortable, but it always seems to move through them and pass out of the body over the course of the journey, I like to call it. It's a concert, but it's a meditation. It's a journey.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you have so many. Well, I've seen on Facebook you recently did an event in Vancouver in a salt mine, and that must have been so intense. I would love to hear about some of the events you have coming up.
Okay, yeah, it's actually not a salt mine. They call it a salt cave, but it's a room in a building, and this really great man, his name is Nuka. He's from Romania. He imported, I don't know how many tons of salt, but there's 20 tons of Himalayan salt in this room.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
crushed on the floor, and then big chunks, lining the walls. And it's a fairly popular form of therapy in Europe. They call it halotherapy. And just walking into the room, you're breathing microscopic salt particles. This is Himalayan sea salt from Pakistan. And you're just breathing, you're cleansing your lungs and blood of fungus, bacteria, and viruses. And so it's very cleansing physically, and there's a lot of negative ions in the air. To me, it feels like an aura bath every time I walk in. I just feel the energy is so pristine. And it's not a large room. We fit a maximum of 18 people in there. And so since I connected with Nuka, and it's called Salt Wonder, I've been doing events there at least once a month when I'm in town here in Vancouver, where I live. Coming up in March, I'm actually going to have the date set tomorrow. It's probably going to be early March. There's a ranch outside of Vancouver in Langley, a town called Langley. The ranch is called Wisteria Acres, and they have healing horses there. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there are some horses here on the planet now that are being recognized as healers, and they're experts at holding space for people and transmitting energy that helps them heal on multiple levels. And at Wisteria Acres, they have some of these horses, and there's a loft right above where the horses live. And I will be doing a day-long retreat with a dear friend of mine who happens to be a shaman from Peru. His name is Jamie Alvarez Acosta. And we'll have a sound journey and breath work and traditional Andean healings as well. And the horses are going to be holding space for us the whole time.
Oh my goodness, that is it.
Yeah.
That's incredible, incredible.
Yeah. Actually, and then later in the fall, Jamie and I will be co-creating a retreat to Peru. Jamie lives in Cusco and is very well versed in the sacred mountain sites around Peru. So we'll take a small group down there, and we'll have sound healings, breath work, qigong, which are also modalities that I teach and to help people to ground this energy that's coming in, and traditional Andean healing and teachings and experiencing the sacred sites.
Ah, beautiful
Yeah.
and so intense. So for our listeners that want to learn more about Matthew's events, they can go to Om Shaman, OMSHAMAN.com. And Matthew, I know that we are running out of time. So I'd like to ask you if you'd like to leave our listeners with a closing message.
Mm. Yes, thank you. Well, we're in very interesting times, and a multi-thousand year cycle has just come to an end, and we've begun a new cycle. Over the last several thousand years, we here on Earth have been under the dominant paradigm of masculine consciousness, and it has brought us to where we are, for better or for worse. But we can all agree that we certainly have our work cut out for us if we are to not only survive but thrive as a species and uh, experience the full potential of life here on Earth. So there is a passing of the staff of authority from the masculine essence to the feminine essence. And so that doesn't mean that the men become cast aside or disempowered. That means that there is an opportunity for greater integration of the masculine and feminine within all of us, both men and women. But we are moving into a way of being that perhaps is softer, more encompassing, more nurturing, more understanding, maybe less competitive and not so jagged. And so we can find that softening within ourselves. We can honor the divine feminine all around us. It's in the earth, it's in our women, it's within everyone. And we will move away from, culturally, from the belittling, the objectification, the attacks on women. We will move away from the exploitation of women and the exploitation of the earth. We have to change our ways, and we can do this the hard way or the easy way. The easy way is to accept the changes, to go with this flow. If we are grasping for power, grasping to hoard energy in any way, we are only bringing pain to ourselves and to everyone around us. So this is a collective movement, but it all begins with each and every one of us inside. I'm going through it just along with all of you, and we just all need to be mindful of being in our hearts, mindful of being in our hearts, and let the heart begin to guide us again, to get out of the egoic mind or solar plexus clutching for power, to move into the heart. The music that I'm offering is here to help us to make this transition. That is my prayer.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Welcome to the divine feminine. It is a new age. And Matthew,
Yes.
you have such a fascinating message that resonates so deeply with me. So thank you so much for being our special guest on Embracing What's Real. What a beautiful soul you are. Thank you,
Oh,
thank you, thank you for this special afternoon we shared. I really appreciate it.
I do too, Helene. Thank you so much. I'm, again, very honored to be your guest here.
And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into Embracing What is Real. For more information about upcoming shows, come see me on my website, insightsbyhelane.com. For more information about Matthew Kocel, again, you can find him on omshaman.com. Till we meet again, my friends, love, light, and blessings to all. Namaste.